Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sober and Wellness Podcast. Today we have here Miss Gina Welsh, and I'm so excited. She comes all the way from Montana, and I live in Florida, but right now we are here in the Sunshine State.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you. All the way across the country.
Yes, how was that flight?
It was okay. I don't love flying.
Especially
But it was fine. It was fine.
Perfect. Well, we're going to talk about a little bit of her story and her journey as a woman being alcohol free.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your story. What was what made you start this journey?
Well, I've pretty much been a heavy drinker just about my whole life.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I started drinking. I mean, certainly not every day, but when I was about 14. And then, weekends, parties, that kind of thing in high school. But right away, I feel like I had a dysfunctional relationship with alcohol. Right away, it was like, as much of this as I can get. This is like, this is what I want. This is what I want all the time. And I think it just slowly escalated over the years. I don't know. When I was in college and that kind of thing, I didn't drink every day.
Okay.
But when I would drink, it was always a lot. And yeah, I think it just got to be kind of slowly more and more over the years. And what really pushed it into overdrive for me is that I'm a nurse in the emergency room, and I was in charge of the emergency room during COVID.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a terrible, terrible time. It was so stressful. There was so much uncertainty. Nobody knew what was going on. There was, nobody knew exactly what was happening. It was from the very beginning. I was in charge of the ER, and there was so much uncertainty, and everything was changing all the time. And people were just terrified.
Wow.
And there was this split between people who were super, super afraid, and then people who didn't even believe that COVID existed. And so sometimes we were at work dealing with people who were, yelling at us, angry with us, and it was so hard. And that, I think, is the time when I can really identify that I would come home and drink every night, just, after work, just to erase.
To numb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can all agree, right? If there was a moment that a lot of us actually did that, but imagine being in the actually ER where everybody is at their peak. They're scared, they're worried, they don't know who to believe. I remember the news were insane.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you for your service, because you guys were putting your life in the line.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy task. When everybody was told to stay at home, these were the people that were just going in the front line. So thank you.
And that was another big aspect of it too, is that we were the one place that we couldn't say no. Everyone else shut down. Clinics shut down, dentists shut down, and everyone was turning away patients at that time, but we were the one place that couldn't do that.
Wow.
And so, there were all sorts of people that even other parts of the hospital, the procedural areas and surgery and that kind of thing, they weren't taking anybody that wasn't emergency.
Wow.
And everybody else was just kind of backing away, and we had to be right in there. And it was so scary because at the beginning, people didn't even know exactly how it was transmitted, exactly, what was going to happen. And people were just terrified for their families. We were worried that we were bringing it home to our families. And then people that had other health conditions were really afraid. A lot of people quit at that time.
Wow.
And so then the rest of us that were there were short-staffed. And
to
it
add
was,
to the
yes,
mixture, right?
yes.
Oh my God.
So it was just a lot. And that was really the time in my life where, yeah, I started drinking a bottle of wine every day. I mean, even on days that I wasn't at
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that just kind of became my normal.
And how many days are you alcohol free now, or what is your time
Oh
frame?
boy, it's one of the times that I actually don't know exactly, because I've been traveling, but it's
Yeah.
right around 680.
So
It's getting close to
almost two
700,
years.
almost 2 years, 2 years
Oh
in
my
May.
God, guys,
Yeah.
2 years. So it is possible, right? For
Oh,
people that are even thinking about it, you can do it. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, after you started drinking the bottle of wine in a daily basis,
mm.
what made you, was it a certain situation that happened that made you think, okay, I need to stop drinking or reevaluate your relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, there were a few things. First of all, I started to get kind of sneaky with, that um, my husband knew that I was drinking, but he is not a heavy drinker
Okay.
at all. And actually, he doesn't drink at all now, and he hasn't for quite some time. But when we first got together, we used to have champagne together and that kind of thing. It was no big deal. But then during that time where I was drinking every day, I felt myself getting to the point where, like, I didn't want him to know as how much I was drinking, because I started to recognize this is every day. I'm drinking at least a bottle of wine every day, if not more. And not absolutely every day. I guess I could say, if I would go do something, like I did a mission trip to LA.
Okay.
During this time. I mean, not right in the middle of COVID. It was after that. But we were gone for almost a week, and I didn't drink that whole time. And it wasn't a problem. There wasn't, I'm lucky enough that I was never addicted to the point where I would withdraw.
Yeah,
And
like
and
the
I'm
physical
super
dependency.
lucky.
Yeah.
Because I sure could have. I feel like I was drinking enough for long enough that certainly could have happened, but it didn't. So but otherwise, just days that I was at home, and if I wasn't doing anything else, I would drink absolutely every day.
Okay.
And yeah, once I started realizing that I was already 3 glasses of wine in, but I kind of wanted to make it seem like I was just opening a new bottle, like I was altering things because I didn't want my husband to see. That was when I started having a little tug at, like, this is too much.
Okay.
If I'm trying to hide,
secret
obviously
drinking, right?
there is then this is not okay. And then that's when I started seeing advertisements for Reframe. And the only thing that got me using Reframe is that it had an option to just cut back.
Yes.
If I had thought at that time that I was going to have to quit drinking entirely, I never would have even, because for me, that wasn't even a thought. I was like, me quit drinking? Never. I would have said that I was the last person that I would have ever imagined stopping drinking.
Now that you said that, funny enough, that's my story too. When I started seeing Reframe pop up in my phone, the thing that caught my attention too was the fact that it didn't have the forever, right? A lot of us don't like the forever. We actually not meant to live forever. So it's a very strong word. So if you're the only one that's thinking that, I have to stop drinking forever, don't put that amount of pressure on you, because that's how I started to. I know that I haven't spoken about my story yet, but yeah, that's definitely the thing. That's actually what got my foot on that app, which has changed my life. That's how we actually met. So you started through the cutback then. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't realize everything that Reframe had to offer. I certainly wasn't utilizing it, because at first I was just, like I would read the daily tasks and I used it as a drink counter. You know, I kind of would set some goals about how much I was going to cut back. And I did cut back. I cut back a lot. You know, I got it. So I was not drinking several days a week. And then when I was drinking, I would try to limit it to 2. But so frequently that just didn't work. I felt like I got into this cycle on cutback where I would have a couple days of not drinking, usually maybe 2 days alcohol free. But then when I would get to my drinking day, I would drink more than ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like binge drinking, in other words.
So, which had really never been my problem before. Before COVID, I think, even though I would drink a lot, I was kind of always a heavy drinker as an adult. But most days I would have, you know, like 2 beers or 3 or something like that. You know, not is so much that it really affected my life. It got that way during COVID. But yeah, I had this cycle over and over again that I was, you know, that I wouldn't drink for a couple days, but I could feel myself white knuckling it to that day, to my drinking day, you know? And it was just like, I would just get so mad at myself over and over again. And then I would feel worse because I'd had a couple days where I wasn't drinking. Then I would drink heavily. And it was just a cycle that I did not like at all.
That's one of the things that I think for me, because I know certain people can moderate, and God bless you, right? That's amazing. But for me, the whole taking the real estate space that it will take my mind to say, okay, I'm allowed to have 2 drinks. I'm allowed to, I'm not going to drink for 4 days, but this is a party. Can I allow myself to drink more because it's a party? And then it becomes this whole thing that I think it puts more stress on me than just when I decided, you know what, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm never going to ask never ask the question. What is it? Never question the decision.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first heard that, I'm like, you know what? That makes sense from the point of, let's just stop thinking, because like you're saying right now, if you have to drink 2 days and then you know that Friday you're allowed to have some drinks. But for me, let's be honest, I was what's called a gray drinker, so gray area drinker. Whenever I decided to drink, I could have 6, 7, 8, 9 drinks easily. So then how am I going to control myself for 2? That's why I heard someone says, if you can't moderate, eliminate. You know, it's simple.
Yeah.
It's a good way.
Yeah.
At least for alcohol, I think I can't moderate. I don't want to moderate, because when I used to drink, I wanted the buzz, not to get drunk to the point that you're in the floor, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody wants that. But I definitely did not just want the taste. No. Now I drink the NA. Why we don't keep drinking it, right? Isn't that funny? And it's because you don't have the alcohol on it. So I have a question for you, Gina. Since you work in the hospital for so long, do you see people that are actually dependent on alcohol? Because that's not, I don't relate to that, but what are the withdrawal symptoms, or what is it that you've seen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I see it all the time, actually. And that was one of the things that made me feel really awful, because once I was drinking a bottle of wine every single day, and I knew I was, and this had gone on for a couple years. It made me feel so ridiculous in the back of my head that we have people that would come in and talk about how alcohol was ruining their life. They're addicted. They can't stop drinking. Or, certain people, we have a fairly large homeless population where I live, and there would be people that come in, pass out on the sidewalk or whatever. And we see the same people all the time. We see the same people every day. And you say things like, God, you're killing yourself. You gotta stop this. And then I'd go home and drink a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, we see people all the time that are absolutely physically addicted, and you have physical withdrawals, and people get real shaky, anxious. There's a scale that as a nurse you measure what level of withdrawal people are in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know
Well,
that.
because we medicate people, and it kind of helps determine how much medication you give them.
Okay.
And so there's all these things that we measure. Like tremor. If people stick out their hand and they're tremulous, it's a certain number. And then people get really sweaty. We see, are their palms just a little moist, or do you see it coming down their face? And then there's headache, irritability. Some people hear things, some people see things.
Wow, that's
nausea. Yeah.
That you will see things.
Oh yeah.
That's the level that alcohol has in your brain, then, that you can actually be hallucinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, alcohol is actually one of the most dangerous drugs to withdraw from if you're physically dependent on it. I like to say, if you put 100 people in a room who are physically addicted to alcohol and 100 people in a room who are physically addicted to heroin, 50% of the people with alcohol would, have seizures, potentially die from their withdrawals. You can die from alcohol withdrawals. In the room of 100 people withdrawing from heroin, they would be miserable. They would be absolutely miserable for a few days. None of them would die. That withdrawal doesn't kill you.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah. Because usually we live in a society with alcohol. It's permissible.
Yeah, it's so normal.
Great. Let's celebrate. You're sad. Let's drink. You are a wedding. That is the moment. I mean, at all times, no matter your emotion, really, it's just the thing to go to.
You're sad.
But then you see a person that does cocaine, heroin, or something like that, and then we all are judging, right?
Yes.
Like that person, it doesn't have it under control. And look at that. Actually, when I heard, because one of the things that I've learned it's a lot is the science behind drinking.
Yeah.
Which I think that if a lot of us will be more educated in that realm, people will really make a change, because a lot of people just think about liver, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's
liver
so much
and
more than
alcohol.
that.
It's the thing that we all think, okay, maybe my liver. I remember I used to have the thoughts. I'm like, oh my God, is my liver okay?
Yeah.
And whenever I will get tested, the one thing I wanted to see was my enzymes.
Yep.
How are my enzymes?
Yes.
Are they too high? I learned that they can go all the way, like I thought 400 were bad. I don't know. You know more than me about that. But it is crazy to know that when you want to leave alcohol and your physical dependence, because I don't even comprehend what that is, that you can actually die, guys. Yep. I mean, I think that is just one statement on itself right there.
It is.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
it's so addictive. It is.
Now what I've seen that I'm excited is that I've seen the movement, right, of being sober curious.
Yeah.
And that's so exciting. And this is the reason that I have created this platform, because one of the things that have happened to me is, as a business woman, an entrepreneur at heart, once I stopped drinking, it's like this whole gate of possibilities, of ideas, creativity, of being consistent. I remember when I started my whole journey last year, 2024, my word was consistency, because alcohol is the number one thing that cuts your consistency. I don't care who you are, where you're from, your lawyer, the president of the United States, whoever it is. Yep. If you're drinking, it's always gonna somewhere. Maybe you can control it, but it's always that thing that can cut your consistency.
Absolutely.
And now look, I have done so many things. I am sharper. I think better. Let's talk about a little bit about that. So, because I know you know a lot about that stuff. So when you stop drinking, one of the things that I've heard a lot of people is they don't like maybe who they are when they stop drinking, right? And I'm talking, they don't like who they are in the social environment. Not necessarily as a person, just in the social aspect, because a lot of people depend on alcohol to socialize. And I think some more than others. So what do you like, once you stop drinking and you go through the process, what do you think that is that people have that, resistance?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, it's just a common thing that you have a couple drinks to loosen up. you know, and it makes it easier to talk to people, kind of thing. And really what it's doing, really what's happening is we have all these instincts as people that are designed to keep us safe, to keep us aware of our surroundings, to keep us alert to danger. And, you know, some people have more anxiety than is really functional, and that's a thing, but
your inhibitions, right? Something
yeah,
like that.
But all we're really doing with alcohol is dampening our instincts that keep us safe.
Wow.
You know, it's you know, taking away your inhibitions is really like, it takes away your judgment, your sense of, and that's why so many people do things when they're drunk that they either say, you know, I've heard so many people say like, well, that really wasn't him, he was just drinking, he was just drunk, or whatever. And it's like, I've always wondered about that, like, well, it doesn't make you into a separate human being, you're the same human being. You know, but what it does is it takes away your judgment, it takes away your higher reasoning and the ability to predict the outcome of your actions, you know.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
You know, that's huge. Because I remember, yes, we make those irrational decisions. And because what you're saying, you see everything pink and everything is rainbows and butterflies. It's like the bad things are gone and now we live in this world. Well, so if you want to, and people get the courage, sometimes they say the liquid courage, right? But in reality, think about if it was courage, because sometimes what you think it's that liquid courage, the next day it's shame.
Yeah.
So how do you go from having courage to then feeling shame?
Yeah.
And that's the, you know, the discrepancy that we have with alcohol and the baseline. So let's talk a little bit about the baseline, because for me, I remember the first 4 months, they were interesting. They were interesting because I think that's the time that you're going through the most amount of changes, right? I remember because not everything it's you know, rainbows and butterflies. I did get bored. Okay. Why? Because there was a point where my fun was to go to a restaurant or go to the bar, have some drinks with friends. And then when you take that aspect, sometimes if they're not your real friends, I'm just talking about like a lot of the people that you hang out in the bars, not necessarily are your real friends. You're just drinking and you're hanging out. So I started to find myself with more time, right? But at the same time, there was that point where I was a little bored that I had to push through. I went back to my childhood. I'm like, Abigail, what did you like when you were a little girl? I'm like, let's go back to basics here. And you know what? I went and I bought myself a pair of rollerblades. I did diamond art. I did the paint by numbers, even though there are like all of their advertisement is with wine. Okay, I didn't have the wine. I did so many things, and after that time, I started getting the glimmers. You know, those little moments where like having a walk in nature will make me happy. And that's because as you start learning about the science behind it, your baseline for your dopamine hit and all of that starts getting better. So how was for you?
Yeah, that's the thing too. You mentioned dopamine, and that's the big, you know, that's our reward neurotransmitter. Like you're being rewarded for something. And all of us have like a baseline level that we're at. And then, you know, something good happens, like you eat your favorite food and it bumps up a little bit, or you see one of your favorite people and it bumps up a little bit. But that's natural. Or, you know, you go for a good run or get some good exercise and that bumps your dopamine up too. But when you're drinking or using any kind of drug that does that, it falsely elevates your dopamine, and it's passive. Like you don't have to do anything other than take that drink to falsely elevate it. But then what starts to happen after a while is your body gets so used to that spike up of dopamine that you're having every day that your baseline where you're at starts falling lower and lower and, you know, underneath where you used to be, just at normal without the alcohol. And that's why you're underneath. That's why people start to feel like they need it.
Yeah, and I saw that it's like it's 4 times, you know, that one sip, not the drink, the one sip touching your lips.
Yeah.
That it's a 4 time, you know, higher hit of dopamine than you eating your absolute better, best meal that you have. And I realized, because one of the things I was thinking about, you start analyzing your life, right? Let's talk about vacations, because that was a big one. So let's talk, like, whenever I went to vacation, I was already looking at what, like, bars I was gonna go. Everything had to do with having a drink.
Absolutely.
If I would think about a museum, for me that was boring. Why? Because in a museum you don't have really alcohol that I know of, at least the ones that I they didn't. But now you ask me, definitely go. And it's not because I am a boring person now. I'm still the same person. But now my baseline is at a better place. I enjoy the little things that before they were mundane. And I think I want to tell people, give yourself the opportunity to go through the little hump, because it is hard at the beginning.
It is.
We're not going to deny it. No. But once you push through the heart, you know what? There is light at the end of the tunnel. And it's like you get this gift. And it might sound cliche, but it's not. I mean, I just think that they should give themselves at least 90 days of trying. Let's not drink for 90 days, you know?
Yeah, that's funny, the day number. Because I remember when I started looking around on Reframe a little bit more, I didn't even realize that there were meetings. Like, I didn't go to a meeting until I had been on it for 7 months.
Wow, 7 months. I didn't realize it, but I think I realized it like by the second month. So you took you 7 months.
You did. And I do actually remember having a few times that I would see that there was a meeting, a live meeting, and immediately I was just like, I'm not doing that.
Was it because maybe you thought like it was like an AA meeting? Maybe?
Yes. That is what I thought.
That's another interested aspect, which I love Reframe, right? And this is not a paid advertisement. This is my first podcast. Maybe later on.
Maybe later.
But no, one of the things is that, for example, I'm not saying that AA doesn't work, because I've heard people Reframe, they love it.
Yeah.
But I don't resonate, at least for what I know, right? I can't judge because I haven't really been there. But for me, when you think about AA, you think of you are dependent to alcohol, like that drunk person that it's always at the corner of the light, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so maybe that's what you thought then, but it's not. So
No, it's not. It's not. But yeah, once I started going to the meetings, that really changed. That changed the whole experience for me. But I remember, I started going to cutback meetings, the cutback middle of the day check-in. And I really started to find a community in there, and had a couple coaches that I really felt like they had gotten to know me and they actually cared about me. And that made me start going to other meetings. And then I ended up getting in some mixed meetings where you could be either on cutback or alcohol free. And it really opened my eyes when I started hearing people talk about being alcohol free and being so happy about it. You know, because at that point I was still thinking like, this is something that they have to endure. Like it's something that they have to just
white knuckle it.
Yeah. And I didn't have any interest in doing that. Well, I just regarded it as impossible.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that they had a 1,000 hours dry challenge there, which is 42 days. And I looked at that challenge and I was like, impossible. Impossible. I could never do that, you know? But I would go to the helping professions meeting, because there's a meeting that's specifically for anybody in a helping profession. It's very broad, you know, nurses, social workers, teachers, doctors, psychologists, you know, anybody like that. And it was that meeting, because it was a mixed meeting, where I started hearing people talking about being alcohol free and being just overjoyed to be alcohol free. And I really never, like, I heard him say it so often that I actually started to believe maybe that was possible.
Yes.
You know, and that's what really opened my eyes to even considering that.
And seeing other people, yes, like seeing other people talking, people that you can relate, right? These are professional people, you know, you work in a hospital, you are a professional person. There is lawyers, there's all sorts of people. And when they talk, you hear their struggles, and a lot of their struggle is the same struggle for all of us. Maybe a little bit different here and there because our stories are different. But once you can start relating, you're like, you know what? I'm not the only one, because that's another thing. A lot of people are really questioning their relationship with alcohol. They are, but they're afraid to talk about it or being judged.
Definitely.
So I remember, this is not her first podcast. This is her second podcast. So how was, I remember you went through a little trial there where you were like, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I did the Sober as Fuck podcast. And
with our friend Ryan.
Ryan Stewart. Yep. And, you know, I really went through kind of a decision-making process about that, because I'm part of a faith community. I go to a church that I absolutely love. I'm on the worship team of that church. And I also have a professional job. You know, I work with all these other healthcare providers, and I really went through kind of a decision-making, soul-searching, am I going to actually share this? You know, because I hadn't been very vocal about it before. Everybody that was close to me knew that I had stopped drinking, but not on a social level, you know, not anybody that I just knew casually. And I was really worried about the church community that I was in. First of all, judging me because I had a problem with my relationship with alcohol. And then secondly, that the podcast was called Sober as Fuck. I was a little nervous.
Bold, okay?
Just
bold out there.
I thought about it. I prayed about it. I actually talked to my worship leader about it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What did he say, or she say?
Yeah, he I talked to the whole team about it, but before we have rehearsals, and then we all get together to pray before services, and then people go through and ask about prayer requests and that kind of thing. And so during that time, I brought it to the whole team, like, this is what I'm doing. Pretty much everybody that I'm close to at church knew that I had an issue with alcohol, because that's part of my testimony. But yeah, we spoke about it within that circle, and most people were really supportive of that. If I was willing to share my story with a wider group of people, that it could potentially help so many more people. And I just got to the point, I remember it was just a day or two where I remember just getting fully over that hump of, why put so much effort into controlling my image for the world, you know? Wow. And like, I was a person that had to have this really tight control over how I thought people were receiving me or thinking of me. And I just got over this hump where I was like, you know what, even if I tightly control everything I'm putting out there, there are still going to be people that have a problem with me. Not everybody likes everybody. There are people who are going to have a problem with me no matter what. If there are going to be people that have a problem with me, it may as well be me being fully me. And like owning my story. One of the coaches on Reframe, actually, she used to say, and I fully embraced it, once you fully own your story, no one can weaponize it.
Wow, that's
if you're walking in it, if you're owning up to everything, you know, how can anybody use that against you? If somebody's got a problem with it, then that's their problem.
That is true. Know? And I like, well, first of all, you were brave, right? Because it does take courage to do that, especially in that environment. But I myself, I'm a Christian. too. I've been raised my whole life, right, in church. And I think it's sometimes I find it interesting because you know what? These we should be encouraged to talk because I know for a fact there's a lot more of us in church that need help, right?
Yep.
And the fact that you opened up and that you first of all that your worship team was, open to it. It just talks about the maturity that they have.
Yeah.
Because as Christians, I believe that we are called to share our testimony. But I do understand that there's that point of, okay, you get scared because just like, how much can I tell? And that's totally understandable, right? But owning your story, like for me, was also, I really didn't put anything on my personal page after 365 days.
Yeah.
I think I put one time 90 days because that was like a good little thing. But I had so much issue putting just the little thing that said alcohol free 90 days.
I never did that either.
You did it?
For quite a while. No, I didn't.
Yeah, and now that you like, well, now you have a podcast. Yes, but I've been alcohol free 15 months. And I think the reason I didn't want to share it so openly was because I was afraid of failing. Of, okay, there's this girl saying that she's not going to drink. Oh, but look at her drinking. And you know what, guys? Even if I make this podcast and I go back and I drink, you know what? I'm going to own it. I'm going to say, you know what? This is the struggle. This is the point, to help other people, because alcohol is a substance that is powerful. Okay. And even I've been reading Proverbs because I'm doing this plan that is a year to complete the whole Bible with the Bible Project. So if you guys, you have to go through that. It's called the Bible Project. It's in the YouVersion Bible app. And you know, in Proverbs, there's a bunch of times where they talk about alcohol, and they not talking about the one thing that everybody says, that God had wine with his 12 disciples, and but it actually says why not to drink it. And one of the things is because you are not you. At the end of the day, you're not you. It makes you do things that you're not gonna do when you're conscious, because what we were talking about, it lowers your inhibitions. And then there's when you start doing the things that sometimes we don't even remember the next day. Right. So I think as a Christian woman, that's one of the things that I want to do in this podcast, is talk about faith too, because there's this whole thing of condemnation, right? Where you are raised in a way that you have to do everything perfect. And the reason that Jesus came to the world was to fix because at that point we didn't have a relationship with God, right? We had to have a priest that will have to do a bunch of stuff in the tabernacle before going to the thing and open. I'm going a little bit deeper, but just to say that was the contest. And then we had to do like the sacrifice of the lamb of the thing. And then Jesus said, okay, let me go there. Let me fix, because I'm the only one that can be perfect. The only one, because nobody else is going to be perfect. And open that relationship with us. And I just think that we should encourage, because at the end of the day, we are humans, right? We're not Jesus here. I mean, there's not even one person. So the fact that we can talk about a struggle, and you know what? There's going to be people that are going to judge you anyway. Yeah. If you want to judge me, it doesn't matter. But I know if I can help one person with this podcast, and you can help a person too, you know what? We have done our job.
Oh, absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's the point, and this is the beauty. And what I've seen in this community is that we support each other in a way that is crazy. Like, I've known her already for like over a year, right? And this is our first time that we see each other in person. And I feel like I'm talking to a friend that I knew already, because we see each other through the videos every single day. And the fact that we're doing this podcast to help other people too, right? And ourselves, because the community is what keeps you engaged.
Definitely.
You were saying that when you started seeing the meetings, that helped you, right?
Oh, very much. Very much. Yeah. Because then I started getting a group of people, and we would start being in contact with each other outside of Reframe. And, I got a group of people that I started talking to every day. And one of the things that I like to say all the time about the early time that I was alcohol free is there were times that I wanted to drink so bad. It was really, really bad. There were some times where I was just like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to be able to get through this. And the thing that got me through in those early days, once I started having a community of people around me that I was talking to about this every day, is before I got so close to going to the store a couple times and getting some alcohol. And I realized that if I did that, I was either going to have to come back the next day and tell that group of people that I drank, or I was going to have to come back the next day and lie to my friends. And
that's a big one.
The amount that I didn't want to do either of those two things was more than the amount that I wanted to drink. And that's what kept me from drinking so many days. So that community is just huge.
It's huge, and it's amazing. It truly is. It has changed my life for the better in all the aspects. Not only alcohol, it's just it teaches you so many things and the science behind it. But yes, community is one of the things that keeps you engaged. It's like, how can I explain it? It's something that keeps you grounded. Because when you try to do this alone, like she said, it's hard. There's going to be moments. I remember my last craving. I don't get those much anymore. And I've never been that craver, but I've had my periods of time where I remember it was my last birthday. And I struggled for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, guys. 2 weeks. I was like, well, I've been doing, because then your mind starts playing tricks, right, to you, and you're trying to justify your behavior before you take that one drink. You already decided that a long time ago. I've heard that. And I remember that I was like, well, it's on your birthday. Why not just have a couple of drinks? At least I was honest about that. I wasn't going to have one. All right. I was going to party it up. Like all the way, like the Bacardi. But what's that song that it's your birthday, we're gonna party, like we're gonna have Bacardi. So anyways, I'm getting off track here, but anyhow, so I thought, okay, maybe I can and just have fun for that one day. I wanted to rent or a yacht, right, with my friends. I would say 10 to 20 people. And then that's when you start going back to your old self. Like, oh man, obviously when you think about the beach, water, yacht, Miami, because I wanted to go to South Florida, oh, it's inedible. It's in your, it is in your arsenal. So then I'm like, just one day, but you know what? Then the reality, the little angel, came, and it's like, knock, knock. And it was like, no, who are you? Who are you lying to? Yeah. Like, once you open that door, so this is where I'm at currently. If I open that door, the possibility of me going back to step one again, like I said, I didn't hit rock bottom. I don't have DUIs, which people do. And the reason I'm saying this story is because not everybody has that low story that you have to get there in order to quit alcohol. You can quit alcohol just because you want to get better. So I'm like, okay, if I open that window, I'm gonna go back. And the whole amount of time that I've done, and the fact that I feel so amazing, that I am so happy, that I have felt my best, why would I jeopardize that? So what would that be for you?
Well, one of the main reasons I am so thankful. I'm thankful for so many things now, but I'm so thankful now that I'm to the point where the decision of whether or not to drink is not an active part of my life. I barely even think about it anymore. But one of the things that really keeps me from going back is that because the beginning was so hard, my beginning was terrible. I know, but it was, I never want to do that again. I never want to be there again. And I know now I can just objectively see that my life is so much better without alcohol in it. So much better.
Yeah, like to go back, right? I'd be scared to be honest, because then you can go back with vengeance. Like I think that will be my story. Like I will go back and I'm just gonna go to a bar and get wasted. Yeah. Because I don't think, first of all, I'm not going to have the tolerance that I had before.
Oh, gosh, no.
And I'm probably going to think that I do because I am like that. I think I'm superwoman. And then, no. And then you do the future, trip and you're like, no, it's not worth it. So if you what would you tell someone that is contemplating or just thinking about it? Because you know who you are. If you're in this podcast, right? If you're listening or watching, the reason you're here is because you start thinking, do I, because that's, I think, where a lot of us starts. Do I have a problem with alcohol? I remember Googling it.
Yeah.
I actually put it in Google and I wrote, do I have a problem with alcohol? And then I was like, well, the fact that I am typing this is telling me. So what would you recommend somebody that it's contemplating this lifestyle?
I think one of the things that I do want to bring in here is that we are women of faith, and for me, that also was a big part of it, because I believe, to actually, I don't like religion with its strict rules of you have to do this and this and this to be good enough, and I don't like that kind of thing. Or you go to hell, right? Yeah. But it's like nobody is perfect,
right?
Jesus was the only one that was perfect, and what we promote in my church, though, and what I actually love and have grabbed onto so much, is having a relationship with God, with yeah. And I've spent a lot of time reading Bible and praying and listening for when I believe I'm getting tugs at my heart, for a certain direction. And a lot of the time that I was like, I'm hiding how much I'm drinking. I'm feeling ashamed of this. I was getting these heart tugs, like, this is wrong.
Like the Holy Spirit talking to you.
Yeah. And so I think, like Abby was saying, if you're in a place where you're starting to question, is this a problem for me? It, to some degree, it probably is. If you're to the point of questioning it at all. But while we're talking about God, though, I feel like I need to tell my story of that the only way I believe, I don't know how else it would have happened, but my tipping point to going alcohol free was a straight up answer to prayer. It was,
wow. I don't know that story either. Yes,
oh gosh, yes, I have to tell you. So I was on cutback and doing my little cycle of having a couple days here and there, then drinking way too much, or drinking a few days in a row, and just doing that over and over again. And then I went on a trip to go see my brother. My brother and I always drank together quite a bit. And both of us are older. We weren't drinking a ton, but I did drink every day that I went and saw him. And then I flew home because I had driven there, and I flew home anyway. I had a layover in Salt Lake. I started drinking in the airport. I had several glasses of wine there. I flew home. I got home. I kept drinking the rest of the night. It was, I probably had at least 2 bottles of wine that day, through the whole day. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, I'm supposedly on cutback. I'm supposedly, I'm addressing this in my life, and this is what I have done. I felt just disgusted with myself. And
that's tough.
Yeah, I was just disgusted. And I had a day of just being in prayer. Like, I have to, at that time, I thought what I needed to do was get 5 to 7 days alcohol free. Because I had never done that many. Well, other than when I would go on trips or something, but just in my own life, making that own decision, I could never get past day 4. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to have 5 to 7 days alcohol free. I just have to do it. Because I'm not sure what I thought that would fix, but that was my goal at the time, And so I prayed about it. I was just like, please God, help me do this. I can't do this. I felt like it was impossible by myself, because I felt like I was just doing this over and over. And as is true so many times, I feel like when you pray for something and it's in alignment with God's will, he'll do it, not necessarily in the way that you think.
Right. Small detail.
And this was the perfect example of that, because after spending that whole next day just, hungover, disgusted, praying, help me, I can't do this myself, I woke up the next morning and I had absolutely no sense of taste or smell. No sense of taste or smell. And
that's scary too, though.
It was scary. I was not sick. It did. I took a couple COVID tests because I didn't believe it. I was like, what's going on? But I didn't feel sick.
And you didn't have COVID,
no,
obviously.
No, wow. I tested negative. I wasn't coughing. I didn't have a stuffy nose. I didn't have a fever. I didn't have anything like that. And I don't mean like that kind of blunted way that, like when you have a cold and things just don't taste right, but you can still sort of tell if it's sweet or sour or whatever. Nothing. I didn't have anything.
Wow, that is something.
I could have, so at that point, I could have been drinking wine, coffee, sewer water. I wouldn't have known. Wow. I couldn't taste anything. And that went on for 10 days.
Well, you got your answer.
Yeah.
It's just in a physical way.
That went on for 10 days. And
wow.
Yeah.
That is something.
And so, I got past my 5 to 7 days, went 10 days. After that, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm kind of, I'm getting a little stride here. And so I ended up going alcohol-free for 17 days.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, this is great. I'm good. I'm good now. And so this was around the time of my birthday. And so I went out to dinner with my family, and I decided that it was okay if I had 2 glasses of wine at dinner. So I had my first glass of wine. That was good. Had my second glass of wine, and I came home in the full feeling of, I need all the wine. I need all.
It opened the gates.
Yes. And it was terrible. And I knew I wanted to drink. I wanted to drink so bad. I hadn't wanted to drink like that in that whole time. And it was just it was so uncomfortable. I was like freaking out. I didn't keep any alcohol in my house anymore because I knew, I couldn't. I had gotten rid of it a long time ago. But my story is, I had this little tiny bottle that still had just like the bottom of Jägermeister. Tiny little bottle, and it had a little bit at the bottom. And so I went and I got it and I drank it. And then I went to the sink and I filled it up with water and I drank that. And I filled it up with water again, and I drank that. And I was just like, and I stood there at the sink after I had done this. And I was like, this is insane. This isn't the way I feel in this moment. I don't ever want it. I don't want this, I don't want this to be my life.
Wow.
And that super dilute little bit of Jägermeister water was the last alcohol that I ever had.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
That's it's unbelievable how God works, right? First of all, I do believe in the Holy Spirit, and I believe that when he died, that's why he left us here, right?
Yeah.
He left the Holy Spirit inside of in each one of us. And the fact that he was nudging you, and then you requested, right?
Yeah.
And then your answer was given to you. But what I liked is that started with, 5-7 days.
Yeah.
You didn't start by saying, I will never, ever for the life of me touch a drop of alcohol. And that's why I want to emphasize that sometimes you start with a little goal, you know? It's like the same thing with fitness. Sometimes we all want to, it took you 5-7 years to get to a certain place, but then we want to be perfect in 7 days, so you have to give your time, your body time. But it's amazing how you had to go through all of that, go back to opening the window again, right? To drinking again, and to realize what I'm doing, it's insane. Like if that didn't teach you right there that you had an issue,
absolutely,
then I don't know what else, right?
Yeah.
But that sometimes we have to get there in order to do the change. And now you're you're a person that we all, love and reframe, have your time under your belt.
Yeah.
You're sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that God many years ago told me that I will stop drinking and that I needed to stop drinking in order to get to my next level.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it here because I wanted to have this podcast as part of my, of my faith.
Yeah.
And usually we live now in a day and age and in a time where talking about your faith now is either uncool or disrespectful or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know what? I choose not to go by that. And I do believe that God has a purpose with this podcast to help people out there to get from the shackles, because I believe those are shackles, alcohol, out of people's life. Because for me, that he told me that years ago. And he told me that I was at church one time and somebody was praying for me and they prophesied over me, which I believe too. Many years ago, even though you believe, but you doubt. Let's be honest. Yep. We all doubt. We're not sure, because it's not like Jesus came down or God and just told me, hey, I'm not Moses, yeah, that's not my story. But he did told me that I was going to help a lot of women. I never knew how specifically. I do real estate, so I help everybody. That's not a thing, but I truly believe that this aligns with all of that and what that bigger purpose. Because since stopping alcohol in my life has been the most, how would I say, it's been like fuel to my life in the best of ways. Yep. Now, with that said, I lost my father about 4 months ago. Actually, yesterday was 4 months ago, and that was really tough. And I thought that was the one thing that could get me back to drinking. Oh, yeah. Because that's the pain that you don't want to endure and you don't want to go through. And we all really don't want to go through that. And the fact that I was able to not drink in the hardest moments of my life, it's just to say that it is amazing. We can do hard things. And I went through all of that. I had my friends, family, and a lot of people from Reframe just being my supporters. Like, I had so much support. I will go into the meetings. I was in at the hospital, and those little moments that I took care just to really vent, because that's all I could do at that moment. And to receive all that love that you receive, that doesn't have any words. And the fact that I was able to give my father the last year of his life with not me drinking, because he never drank. My dad was a non-drinker his whole life. He died at 96 years old. He never drank, and he was so proud of that. And so that's another one to say. People say sometimes, well, I come from a drinker family. Well, I don't come. My whole family really doesn't drink, and I did. So that doesn't have to be always the case. But the fact that I was able to give him that gift, and I was able to process all my emotion and give my best self to him, being present to make the most difficult decisions in my life, which is to take care of my dad's life, that is priceless. And for that, I am so thankful. So I just wanted to say, Gina, thank you so much for being with me in my first episode, Who Better Than You. We've been together in this journey for quite a bit. And I think that you also have your purpose. You also have your story to be, to speak to masses, because this is something that I think we can help a lot of people. Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Anything else you want to tell our friends? Oh my goodness. I would just say the biggest thing, I've said a couple times, I felt like me stopping drinking, I felt like it was impossible. Absolutely believed that it was impossible. And and it's not. That's what you absolutely can do it. I would have thought that I was the last person that would have stopped drinking. And I have. I'm almost 2 years now. I'm never going to drink again. Yes. I'm okay with saying never. Yeah. Because I'm not. And that's okay. A lot of people aren't, and that's fine. Yeah. But I don't want to. And it's just been, it's changed my entire life for the better. It's amazing. Awesome. Well, we will celebrate her 2 years coming up soon. And I want to say thank you, everyone, for watching my first episode at the Sober and Wellness podcast. We'll be talking a lot about, obviously, sobriety, relationships, wellness, nutrition, and all that good stuff that I believe once you take, because I believe that in order to have true wellness, you can't have alcohol. That's just my opinion. I know people will fight about it, but I just think that alcohol is not something that does anybody any favors. So, anyways, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like, and see you guys in the next episode.